What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college basketball. And today we are going to be discussing the Saturday round 2 slate for March Madness. I am recording this from parts unknown. Just kidding. I'm in Ripon, Wisconsin. I'm heading up to the casino in Green Bay with some of my buddies to see these games. And I figured it would be better to record this video here instead of having all those guys smashing beers and whatever else they're going to be doing in the background. So here we are. If you like the content, well, first of all, just thank you if you've supported the content. A lot of you have. We're around 200 subscribers away from being able to get to 1,000. And anyone who's liked, subscribed, left a comment, that really does help a lot. I can't overstate that. And thank you if you've spent any length of time with us on the show. I really appreciate it. All right, let's dive right in. We have a lot of games to get to. I'm not sure. Let's go to this view. All right. I'm not sure if this is in chronological order. It's mainly in order of the ending of the games from the round prior. So if it's out of chronological order, that's just how it's set up. Creighton takes on Auburn. This game has an 8.5-point spread in favor of the Tigers, and the total in the game comes in at 151. Only injury in the game is Pop Isaacs, at least among main contributors. This game has already experienced a lot of line movement. Money has basically poured in on Creighton. And I think that was after Auburn's 3-4 finish at the end of the regular season in the SEC tournament. And then a half of basketball where they looked like they hadn't prepared for Alabama State. And I think that's probably what they actually did, because Alabama State is ranked 269th in total power rankings, and Auburn was still able to win by 30 at the end of the day after they struggled a little bit in the first half with the trap. Auburn has the best resume in basketball still to this day, even with their struggles of late. 10-5 against the top 25. Houston, Iowa State, Purdue, Missouri, Tennessee, Bama, Kentucky, Ole Miss twice. You name it, they have it. Only a few losses, and they only have one outside the top 6. That was to A&M, the game after they clinched the SEC regular season. It's just that now 3 of those 5 losses have come in their last 5 games, and they haven't looked great optically on the court. We'll talk about that more in a second. But what has Creighton done? They're 34th overall. They went 2-4 against the top 25, beat Kansas and St. John's. 3 losses outside the top 50 to Nebraska, San Diego State, and Georgetown. That's the worst one. So it's a streaky body of work, but even in the last 3 games, it's pretty streaky. They dominated Louisville yesterday, absolutely crushed them, 89-75. It honestly wasn't even that close through most of the game. They limited Louisville to 27.5% from 3, generated 18 fouls. But this is still a streaky body work, and you don't have to go all the way back to non-con for some of this stuff. Like, let's just look at their last 3 games. All right. Louisville is a great outcome. It's the most recent one. It's the one people remember. It's the one casuals remember because they haven't watched any basketball this year till now. But even going back to the Big East tournament, looked relatively decent against St. John's in the first half before getting run out of the gym. And the game before that, they were in overtime against DePaul. So, I mean, you can find these anecdotal data points across the board for how these teams look in recent samples. You can go back to non-con. It's a volatile game. You can find arguments on either side of the page. Ask Michigan and San Diego fans. Anyway, for the stylistics in this contest, it's going to be an amazing matchup with Kalkbrenner on the floor because that gives Creighton the 3rd ranked effective height lineup in the entire country. 65th in rebounding for them. Kalkbrenner at their 5 provides a mismatch for Creighton in their advantage in most contests. Auburn 74th in effective height, 54th in rebounding. They can definitely match Creighton's prowess on the glass, and they don't do it with just one player largely. As far as shooting, Creighton is the better shooting team, 20th in effective field goal percent. They're first inside. That's another Ryan Kalkbrenner stat. But they're only 156 from 3. They shoot the 9th most threes in the country. This can get them in or out of games. It's part of the reason they have a streaky resume. And part of it is Ashworth, only 37% from 3. It's regressed a little bit. But a lot of it has been Jemiah Neal shooting 31% from 3 with 150 attempts. Just, you're not getting optimal play out of this roster all the time. When you do, it looks great, and they crush teams like Louisville. When it doesn't, you're in overtime against DePaul. And they're going to have their work cut out for them offensively because Auburn's 12th in total defense, 42nd inside, 5th in three-point defense. They're a really unique mismatch for Creighton individually when Creighton has the ball because every Auburn guard stands at least 6'6", except Todd Pettiford. So guys like Stephen Ashworth are going to be absolutely dwarfed out there. And then while Janai Broome, Chaney Johnson, and Dylan Cardwell might not actually match up to Kalkbrenner in terms of height, these are the three best defenders on the team. And even if Kalkbrenner draws fouls on one of them, you can throw the other one in defensively. Obviously, the biggest risk would be losing Broome because he is the most efficient offensive player in the entire country. Statistically, that's not an opinion. He literally grades out as the number one overall offensive player, so losing him would be bad. But anyway, on defense, what I'm trying to say is one of these guys can foul, and then one of the other ones steps in. So the depth really helps Auburn when Creighton has the ball. As far as Auburn on offense, we mentioned it a little bit. Broome is the most efficient player in the country, and this team is also 39th in three-point percent. Tahad Pettifer, Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, and Chad Baker-Mazar are all over 38% from three. Creighton, of course, has the elite rim protection with Ryan Kalkbrenner, multiple-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year, but they're 94th defending the three. On the periphery, Creighton is 233rd in turnovers committed. They don't force a lot of turnovers themselves either. Auburn, 156 in turnovers forced. Never turn the ball over. This favors Auburn. Fouls, though, I think they favor Creighton on paper till you dive into it a little bit. They commit the fewest fouls in the country, but they don't generate any fouls. Auburn does get into foul trouble, but it's more of a stylistic choice because they're so deep. 109th in bench minutes, deepest roster in the country. They can just play aggressive. We make this outside the -8.5. We make this about -10 on the dot. And I'm going to be at the casino. I'm going to be in Green Bay. Wisconsin's got some weird state laws. You need to be on the premises to make bets. I'm finessing my way around that on the day-to-day. But when I'm with my buddies, we're going to have to bet something at least on every single game. The reason I haven't taken Auburn yet is this is just keeps coming down towards Creighton. It was -10 yesterday. Now it's -8.5, less than 12 hours later. So we'll wait and see where this settles. I imagine 8.5 is probably the number this meets resistance. We will have something on Auburn, just not sure what quite yet. McNeese takes on Purdue. This game is a 6-point spread in favor of Purdue. The game has a total of 143, no major injuries. Purdue is 18th overall, 5-7 against the top 25, beat Bama, Ole Miss, Michigan, UCLA, Maryland. Only two bad losses, Penn State and Indiana. They just beat High Point in round one. They crushed them on the glass, generated 20 fouls. Really just a difference in talent overall. High Point could not hang with them for the whole game, even though they had glimpses of success. McNeese, big upset over Clemson, and it was much wider than the final score indicated for a majority of the game. A little bit weird. Shiflin got in foul trouble immediately. Locken fouled out with like 7 minutes left because he got a foul. He talked a little bit and then got a technical. So he 2 fouls on one play. That'll do it. So it was kind of a weird run out for Clemson. I don't think they were going to win the game anyway. McNeese had a fantastic game plan. More on that in a second. But that was their best win of the year. They only had one other win in the top 100 all season to North Texas. They did play some teams close in the top 100. Bama, Liberty, Santa Clara, Ole Miss. All single-digit losses. But this was great. They actually got one of these good wins finally after losing a bunch of them down at the wire. As far as stylistics, honestly, I thought Clemson was a worse matchup for McNeese than Purdue. Clemson was taller. And hypothetically, they were going to put McNeese at a huge disadvantage inside. Now, with that said, a lot of the Clemson bigs were off the floor for parts of the game. So maybe I am still, or maybe that still should be considered. But anyway, Purdue is 109th in effective height, 124th in rebounding. The biggest concern with McNeese is they're 284th in height and 81st in rebounding. Really good effort on the glass, but they're just not tall. Big teams should have success against them. However, this team is full of high major transfers, like Kadir Copeland, their point guard is 6'6". Then they have like Christian Shoemake, Joe Charles. There's a lot of them. I won't go through everyone on the roster. But the large reason why they were able to win this game is their coach is awesome. Will Wade, he's going to NC State. And this team, yesterday, they threw out a zone basically that they hadn't run all year. Clemson hadn't prepared for. And even in, they do these on-court press conferences or whatever, interviews. They're very short and brief. But as they were talking to both of these teams, both coaches highlighted the fact that they were running a zone. Will Wade admitted it. And the Clemson coaches just like, they're running a zone they haven't shown this year. We're unprepared for it. And Clemson, the veteran team they were, could not figure it out. So they have the coaching advantage. They're going to find ways to get to the glass. And the advantages that Clemson posed, Purdue doesn't exactly have, at least to the same degree. Offensively, McNeese is 75th in effective field goal, 96th inside, 77 from three. Don't shoot a ton of threes, but honestly, that's good against Purdue. Joe Charles is the second most efficient player on the team on the inside. He stands 6'9". That should be fine against Purdue, who's 68th. Excuse me. They are, 68th in total defense, 27th defending the three. The big elephant in the room, 348th in interior defense. Everyone's gotten them inside this year. Purdue is a sieve down there. As far as when Purdue has the ball, 16th in effective field goal, 37th in the interior, 9th from three. This team does have defensive weaknesses, and a lot of them are Trey Kaufman-Renn, but man, he's now scored 20 points in 13 of his last 16 games. Braden Smith shoots 38.5% from three. Fletcher Loyer shoots 46%. McNeese can defend, and we just mentioned their ability to run different schemes. And I think that does disrupt Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn in the pick and roll, where they are deadly with that two-man game. But McNeese can definitely defend that. They just are so variant with their defensive styles. They're 75th overall, 35th inside, 83rd in the perimeter. Purdue doesn't have a lot of other threats offensively other than Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith. So I actually think they can sort of put the brakes on this offense. From there, McNeese, 108th in turnovers committed, 40th in turnovers forced. Those are good numbers. Purdue is a very steady hand at point guard, so I don't think McNeese is really going to be able to turn them over a lot. McNeese is 199th in fouls committed. Purdue does generate a lot of fouls, 46th in that area. McNeese will play aggressive because they have a deep bench. They're 92nd in bench minutes. But still, if you're fouling a lot, I don't really want to put Purdue on the line. They outrank McNeese 147 to 235 in free throw percent. In the game, if you made me pick a side, it would be McNeese. For a lot of the stylistics and coaching, I think they will frustrate Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith. But I think the best play in the game is an under 144.5. We make it well below this. Pace is not exactly the best in this game. Both teams outside the top 285. But I've been ice cold on unders. I can't lie to you. Every time I pick an under, it has basically been the kiss of death. It screams over. I would play this with some hesitation based on my track record, but I already played the under. When I get to the Oneida Nations Casino in Green Bay, I'm going to play this again. BYU takes on Wisconsin. This game, it's a pick 'em in some spots. It's -1 in some others. What we know is that it's moving towards Wisconsin. We're recording this very early in the morning on Friday. The total is 155. There's no major injuries. Cannon catchings for BYU. That's about it. Wisconsin just absolutely dismantled Montana in round one. No surprise there. Honestly, the biggest surprise was it was only an 8-point game at halftime. But they crushed them on the glass, generated more fouls, shot 73% inside. It's just a much better team than Montana. What did we expect? Wisconsin's 4-6 against the top 25, beat Arizona, Purdue, Illinois, Michigan State. They really only have one bad loss, and it was against Penn State in the finale. Maybe they were looking ahead to the Big Ten tournament. I don't know. BYU, much better win, but they were lower seeded, so they had to play a harder team. They beat VCU 80-71. Honestly, the game was wider than that through most of it. They out-rebounded VCU, forced 23 fouls, held VCU to 44% inside the arc. It was a great win for BYU. They looked awesome. BYU went 4-4 against the top 25, beat Iowa State twice, Arizona, and Kansas. They did lose outside the top 54 times. Providence, although Bryce Hopkins played. TCU, Utah, and Cincinnati. So it's a streaky body of work. Really good on the high end, a couple low ends. But you can hang your hat on most of the high-end stuff has come of late. Wisconsin and BYU is an interesting matchup on the court. Wisconsin 38th in effective height, 98th in rebounding. BYU is 124th in effective height, 17th in rebounding. This requires some context. BYU actually doesn't have a lot of size in the front court. They play with elite guards in terms of height. Like Yegor Denham is 6'9", and he plays point guard a lot of the time. But if you look at their 4 and their 5, Keba Kieta and Mawat Mag, they're 6'8" and 6'7". Those are going to be the defenders lining up on Stephen Krall at 7 feet and Nolan Winter at 6'11", not to mention Carter Gilmore. So you do have size advantages for BYU at guard. Wisconsin doesn't have small guards. It's not huge. But on the inside, Wisconsin does have some pretty sizable advantages, and I think they will have the advantage on the glass in this game. As far as shooting, Wisconsin 52nd, 37th inside, 77th from three. BYU does not have a good defense. They're 54th overall somehow, 114th inside, 242nd from three. And I mean, when you look at Wisconsin's roster, both Stephen Krall, Carter Gilmore, top 200-ish offensive rating guys. Tanjay shoots 39% from three. Kamari McGee off the bench is at 45% from three. Honestly, it's been guys like Blackwell and Klesmit who haven't lived up to expectation, especially Klesmit. But fortunately, he hasn't needed to shoot as much this year. They let him facilitate. And BYU, you can score on them. On the other side, BYU can really score. 7th in effective field goal, 6th inside, 32nd from three. Richie Saunders, Dawson Baker, Trevenell, all above 39% from three. And Wisconsin's defense is pretty strong overall. This team is 128th three-point defense, 37th inside. I think, honestly, if your path to scoring BYU is just keep shooting your threes. When you break down Wisconsin's D being a little weaker against the three, that's a direct path for BYU. As far as turnovers, BYU commits the 207th most turnovers in the country. They actually will turn it over a lot at times. But I don't think it's a problem in this game is because Wisconsin is 329th in turnovers forced. Outside of like Illinois, Wisconsin and Illinois forced the fewest turnovers in the Big Ten. So not really expecting this to be a major factor, nor fouls. We make this very clearly Wisconsin favored. Outside -1, I'm fine with playing the -1. I played the pick'em. You cannot play this one in Wisconsin at the casino because you cannot bet home court team, or you can't bet home teams in Wisconsin. Collegiately, you can't bet UW Milwaukee, Marquette, or Wisconsin. So we'll play this at the good old offshore, and we'll ride with the pick'em line because I'm not going to be able to get anything else throughout the day. If I could, I would be fine with the -1. Gonzaga, Houston. 5-point spread in favor of Houston, 140.5 total. I would argue pretty heavily this is going to be your best game in the second round. There's a lot of good games. I would hear other arguments, but it's really hard to say this is not the best one, which is crazy. It's a 1-8 matchup, but Houston, 3rd overall in the country in power rankings. They played a 16 seed SIU Edwardsville, won by 38 points and covered more importantly. But this is one of the best resumes in the country, 8-3 against the top 25, some of the best wins you could draw up. So a lot of them did come in conference. 2 of them have asterisks. They played Iowa State and Texas Tech without starters. But, I mean, they only have 4 losses. 3 came in OT. Only one of them is questionable to San Diego State. That was in OT. It's a phenomenal resume. Gonzaga's resume was full of holes, and I bet Georgia, and I was wrong. I've been kind of on the let's buy low on the SEC and let's sell high on the team that basically has their power ratings up at number 9 because of close losses and slaughterings of bad teams. But I'm wrong, and I think I was wrong on Gonzaga. This team is only 1-4 against the top 25 with a win over St. Mary's. They just beat Georgia, who ranks 36. They dismantled them, though. I mean, like, at some point, the optics do matter, and when you're beating an SEC team by 30 points, 21 points, whatever it is, they were winning by 30 through a lot of the game. At one point, the score was 23-3. I mean, at some point, you got to at least change your opinion a little bit, which I am beginning to with Gonzaga. However, in this game, I mean, Gonzaga is really going to go through it. It's just a wild clash of styles. Gonzaga is 47th in pace. Houston's 360th. Just like Houston plays a game that not a lot of teams can replicate. So it's going to be a weird game for Gonzaga to just jump into with one day of prep. However, I mean, they do have a lot of potential advantages, or at least ways to mitigate Houston's. 84th in effective height, 18th in rebounding. You need to have something like that if you're playing Houston, because this team is 33rd in rebounding despite not being tall, 257th. They're just so well coached and aggressive that despite their size, they're going to rebound on you. So Gonzaga having Ike and Huff and Greg inside with size does matter a lot in this game. And Gonzaga can shoot, which you're going to have to because Houston's the number 1 defense in the country, good inside and out. But Gonzaga 147th in 3, 11th in 2-point percent. Ryan Nembhard's hitting 40% of his threes. Nolan Hickman's at 45%. They lag behind that everywhere else. But honestly, some of this game might just come down to Graham Ike, whether he fouls or not against Houston, because Houston being so strong inside, Gonzaga not having the best 3-point shooting, it's good. It's not great. If you lose like Ike and some of that efficiency you do have in the interior, you could be cooked. However, Houston has their own struggles. Very few of them. Both teams have very few struggles. But with Houston, they're the worst shooting team by choice. 88th in effective field goal, 261st inside, 2nd in 3-point percent. You might hear those numbers and be like, oh, you're really good at shooting threes. Why don't you just shoot a lot of threes? They haven't. They're 296th in 3-point rate. That's adjusted for pace. So when you take pace out of it, they rank 269 in 3-point attempts. They have awesome shooters. Cryer, Uzan, Sharp, all above 42% from 3. However, they're running their offense through Juwan Roberts and Joseph Tugler. And those guys are just not the best offensive players. So that's how you get the number 2 3-point shooting team driven all the way down to 88th in effective field goal. They like trying to score inside with really inefficient shots. I don't have the answer. But Gonzaga is 105th inside. I mean, if you were trying to attack a matchup, that is the one on paper you could attack. But still, I mean, you have the second three-point shooting team in the country. Gonzaga is 15th defending the perimeter, but I think you can shoot over the top of them. But Houston has a preference for inefficiency on offense. I don't know what to tell you. Luckily, they're so good at rebounding. That cleans up some of these weird, bad hook shots that Juwan Roberts takes. Anyway, Houston has the matchup on their defensive end anyway. They have slight edge in turnover margin. It's basically just because they're 14th in turnovers forced. Gonzaga's 103rd. Neither team turns the ball over a lot. Fouls don't project to be a major factor in the game. And honestly, we make this pretty close to the projected spread. I'm probably going to play a Houston side, especially if this moves towards Gonzaga, which I think there's a chance that it might. But we're making this about 4.5, 5 points, right in that, with Gonzaga projected at 67.7 and Houston 73.1. It's very close to the 4.5, 5 line that you see directly on the screen. So nothing to bet ahead of time, but we'll likely play something on the Houston side. I will put all of the plays I make at the casino in Discord if you're interested. We do all projections for games, totals, sides, player projections. You can find that in the link below. It's only $10 for a week, $30 for a month. No long-term commitments. Thank you if you have supported, have had a lot of good feedback on the Discord. But if you're interested in any of that, we also just have a good community that's chopping it up all the time. Check it out. But let's move on. Michigan takes on Texas A&M. This game is a 2-point spread in favor of A&M, a 141 total. The public hated both of these teams, and unfortunately, they both made it forward for them. I don't really care who wins or loses. I just like watching and hope my bets win. Michigan knocked off the darling of the country, UC San Diego, who was 38th overall. They won 68-65, had a lead of more than that through most of the game, but let them crawl back. And more importantly, they only had 14 turnovers. I know UC San Diego was supposed to turn them over 45 times, but they only did it 14 times. Michigan won on the glass. Honestly, I thought they'd win by more, but only 6 rebounds ahead of UC San Diego, generated more fouls, better shot production. They just look like they played a roster of D2 players, which is what UC San Diego had. As far as overall body of work, now 6-5 against the top 20. A lot of those wins, 3 of them coming in the Big Ten tournament. They do have a couple questionable losses. Minnesota, Wake Forest among them. Those are outside the top 70. But it's a good overall body of work for Michigan. And honestly, they draw an interesting matchup here because Texas A&M has problems themselves. The Aggies are 17 overall. They just beat Yale by out-athleting this team. They went 80-71. Yale fouled 21 times. It's just that. Yale, without Danny Wolf, who is now in Michigan, funny enough, could not handle the athletes that A&M had. A&M is similar to Michigan, where they have a lot of the high-end wins, Texas Tech, Purdue, Missouri, Auburn. But they're streaky for other reasons, 5 losses that are questionable, mainly UCF and Texas, Vanderbilt. But let's get into the stylistics because they're really important. Michigan is second in effective height, 30th in rebounding, with Vlad Gold and Danny Wolf being 7 feet tall. That's super important because A&M needs to rebound to win games. They're 4th in rebounding, but only 253rd in height. They don't play anyone taller than Farrell Payne at 6'9". They have to win with effort and athleticism. That's much easier said than done against the dual 7-footers for Michigan, which doesn't even include like Stetter coming off the bench. So this is a rare, 29 out of the 33 games, I believe, is the stat. A&M has won on the glass. This is one of the matchups where that's not the most likely. Anyway, Michigan's big problem is turning the ball over. They're 329th in turnovers committed. But, I mean, Texas A&M 54th in turnovers forced. Yes, it's an advantage on paper. But let's not overlook that Texas A&M is 249th in turnovers committed. I mean, and if you isolate the last month, Michigan's been a little better with the ball, just like inside the top 300. And A&M has gone outside the top 250. So this is narrowed. Both these teams extremely reckless with the ball. So I don't even think this is as big of a mismatch as it was in the first game that Michigan played. Like A&M will turn it over just as much as Michigan. Foul shouldn't be a major player in this game. But let's get back to the on-court, half-court stuff. Texas A&M can't shoot. 317th in effective field goal, 290th from 2, 317th from 3. Zerk Phelps at 26% on 134 attempts. I don't know how he still plays. Wade Taylor, 32.5%. He had a decent game last game. But Michigan has the size, and they're 19th two-point defense, 70th from three. The biggest thing in this game to me is Michigan is, for all their rebounding success, 208th at defensive rebounding. Texas A&M is first in offensive rebounding. How does this matchup go? A&M's going to throw up bricks. If they can get the second chance opportunities at the rim, they're going to have a good chance to win. If Michigan can box out, they're going to have an awesome chance to win. Because Michigan, although streaky on offense, as long as they're just allowing Texas A&M to make mistakes, they should probably win this game or at least keep it within the spread. 37th in effective field goal, 6th in 2-point percent, 189th from three. But this is super weird. Shot the ball really well to begin the season. Had a stretch of the year where they basically were outside the top 300 in the last 6 games or so, and then turned it back around in the NC or in the Big Ten tournament. 38% from three, and Trey Donaldson and Amari Burnett both over that mark. So this is, I don't know which Michigan's going to show up. I know A&M is elite on defense, but their biggest weakness is defending the three. They're 155th there, best inside, 26th. So how does that go in this game? Just a lot of questions for two teams that are very limited. We actually make this inside the 2 points. Very likely to end up with something on Michigan. Not sure where the line goes, so just going to wait and see a little bit before we move on. But both teams that are clearly limited that have to face each other in round 2. Like, what would the winner or what would like a Gonzaga or Houston do for one of these games? They have to face each other, and I think both of them would rather play this team than their opponent, almost without question. UCLA, Tennessee. This game has a 4.5-point spread in favor of the Vols. The total is 133. No major injuries in the game. Ade Morrow went down, but he's allegedly fine. UCLA's 22nd overall. They would 4-5 against the top 25, beat Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Gonzaga. Lost 3 times outside the top 50. Gave North Carolina their only quality win, but they just demolished Utah State in the last game by, it was 72-47, so a great win. Tennessee's 5th overall just beat up on Wofford. They allowed it to remain like relatively close, 77-62, but that game was never in question. From there, 6-5 against the top 25, elite wins across the board. No loss worse than Vandy on the road by 1 point, and that's their only loss lower than 26th. Tennessee is awesome across the board. Size could be in favor of UCLA. You look at height, 54 is UCLA, Tennessee's 51. Rebounding is close between these teams, actually favors Tennessee, but Tennessee plays Igor Milicic and Felix Oxpara inside, 6'10 and 6'11. UCLA has a 7'3 center in Ade Morrow. He just doesn't play as much as maybe you would think. They use Tyler Bilodeau in there at 6'9", so sometimes they're going to have the height advantage, sometimes they're not. Tennessee is 19th in total offense, but only 85th in effective field goal, 69th inside, 160th from three. Chaz Lanier shoots 40%. They are very reliant on that. But UCLA, their defense, they are pretty strong overall inside their 188th. From the three, they are 128th. So turnovers driving a lot of their total defense. But I don't know, man. Like, Ade Morrow and Eric Daly don't play full minutes. Those are the two top defenders on the team. They use some weird rotations. I think UCLA could set up certain matchups that would frustrate Tennessee. On the other side, UCLA is 83rd in effective field goal, 101st in 2-point percent, 98th from three. Sky Clark, 39% from three. Kobe Johnson, not far behind. Bilodeau and Daly both hit over 40% too, but they don't shoot as much. Those are very small samples. The problem is Tennessee's 3rd in total defense, 29th inside, 1st from three. Like, just how do you score on them? In the periphery, UCLA is 5th in turnovers forced. Tennessee is 102nd in turnovers committed. I guess that's a slight advantage. But Tennessee, you'll grab it right back through fouls. They have the foul margin advantage. UCLA is 266 in fouls committed. They play a deep bench, so they can play aggressive. But Tennessee outranks them in free throw percent, 111-248. I don't think you really want to put Tennessee at the line that much. Both of these teams are really slow. 338th in tempo is Tennessee, UCLA 296th. Both teams definitely better on defense than offense. I think you can play an under 133. That's kind of an eye-popping number, one that I'm not sure I want to take yet. Also, I've been ice cold on under, so I'm kind of just giving myself pause. But that is where we lean in the game. St. John's takes on Arkansas. St. John's is 7-point favorite at 144 total. Injuries. Arkansas's Adu Thiero. He's been out for a while. Zvonimir Ivasic has a thumb injury. He only played 4 minutes in their last game. He probably will play, but we don't know how much. St. John's Brady Dunlap's been out for a while. A couple other guys have been banged up and playing through it. Arkansas's 39th overall, 4-7 against the top 25. 2 losses outside the top 50 that were pretty bad, but they just knocked off Kansas in their first game. It was very ugly overall. Kansas with a ton of turnovers. Hunter Dickinson with one of the worst second halves I've ever seen. Couldn't score at the rim. Arkansas tried to give it right back through shooting. Neither of these teams wanted to win the game, but Arkansas did. So now they have to play St. John's, who absolutely beat the snot out of Omaha in their last game. But it was Omaha. What did you expect? St. John's has still not played a top 25 team this year. Best win is against Marquette, who is 26. Beat them 3 times. Also beat UConn twice. But lost to Baylor, Georgia, Creighton, and Villanova all outside the top 25. So they're a little bit streaky. We know why. They can't shoot. 250th in effective field goal, 164th from 2, 341st from 3, but they're never shooting threes. Very self-aware team. Arkansas is 22nd in total defense, 81st inside, 70th on the perimeter. But I think a lot of this is going to come down to St. John's 9th in offensive rebounding versus Arkansas 97th in defensive rebounding. And there might be room for Arkansas to be worse there. They're 7th in effective height, not the best rebounding unit overall, 162nd. But these injuries that are occurring, man, like Adu Thiero is 6'8". He's gone. Zvonimir Ivasic is 7'2". He played 4 minutes last game. He hasn't played more than 20 in 3 straight games. He's not healthy. Arkansas is deep there. Jonas Adu, 6'11". Trayvon Brazil is 6'10". But you just remove 2 of the bodies that you're normally rotating with those guys. Brazil's been known to foul. So you're just thin. St. John's is 136th in effective height, 25th in rebounding. With the injuries to Arkansas, I think the gap is narrowed between their 7th effective height and St. John's 136. So to get it back to the advantages and disadvantages, I think St. John's can win this battle. 9th on the offensive glass versus Arkansas's 97th defensive rebounding unit. And when Arkansas is on offense, 89th in effective field goal, 61st, 2-point percent, 199th from 3. And a lot of that's because Zvonimir Ivasic is 38% from beyond the arc. He creates a lot of mismatches with spacing, but he's not going to play a lot. From there, I guess they got back Boogie Fland. He shoots 35%, and they said they didn't want to play him a lot of minutes, and he had to go 24 in the first game. I wouldn't put him anywhere lower than that in this contest. It's just scoring against St. John's is way easier said than done. They're super big. They're athletic. 2nd in total defense, 10th inside, 78th from 3, 12th in turnovers forced. Arkansas is 133rd in turnovers committed. That's an advantage. Arkansas doesn't force a ton of turnovers. Fouls don't project to be a major factor in this game. If either team is on the line, Arkansas shoots better free throws. It's a fast game. It's an up-tempo game. Arkansas plays the style that St. John's wants to run with. It's just kind of a bad matchup for Arkansas, which leads me to pause on this game because mathematically we make this inside the 7-point spread. Right at 6, actually, like 6 on the dot. I don't know where this line is going to move. I don't think I can play the game right now. But if this ends up being like close to a +6 or something, I would change my tune and get back to St. John's. It's just once my intuition disagrees with the model by like a point or more, you got to either hesitate or try to find a reason why. Is this an injury thing? And it might be because Arkansas is clearly not healthy. I'm not sure St. John's is either, but St. John's at least has the players on the court where Arkansas lacks them. So we'll pause and see where this comes in throughout the day. Final game, Drake takes on Texas Tech. This game is an 8-point spread in favor of Tech, a 127 total. Chance McMillian did not play in the last game for Texas Tech. He was a game-time decision. I thought he was going to go, but he didn't. Darion Williams did play. He did not look healthy when he was out there, so that's another one to mention, even though he's playing through an injury. Drake's healthy. Drake, very good win in their first matchup, beat Missouri by 10. And it was kind of hanging around that number for most of the game. But they beat Missouri on the glass, held them to 25% from 3, and beat them inside. And they were a much smaller team than Missouri. Missouri had shown cracks down there. Drake is extremely well coached, and they exploited those to the victory. That was their best win by far this year. Prior to that, their best win was Vandy, which is still a good one. But Drake, as you can see, has beaten some good teams. Texas Tech beat UC Wilmington 82-72. Clearly, they didn't try. They didn't even have McMillan suit up. But, they tried enough to win. But this was not full, game on the line. We need all our guys out there playing the max minutes. Texas Tech didn't do that. So I think that's why you see a margin of victory inside the projected spread. They also allowed 42 rebounds. It was a game that they were unlikely to lose even without their best players. They're 4-5 against the top 25, lost thrice out of the top 50, St. Joe's, UCF, and Tech. So those are a little concerning. But this is a cool stylistic matchup because neither team is particularly tall, but both teams are very aggressive on the offensive glass and just on the glass in general. Drake is only 330th in effective height, 15th in rebounding. Missouri was much taller, but streaky inside. I thought they could potentially exploit this height, but they ended up not being able to. Texas Tech is only 212th in effective height, 39th in rebounding, which is the crazy part. Like JT Topman at 6'9", he's a top 30 rebounder in the country. Cam Maniwa for Drake, the Wyoming transfer, 6'8". He's top 50 rebounder in the country. These guys are winning with positioning and athleticism and effort. And now they get to match up against each other. It's going to be electric. Drake is a good shooting team, 61st overall in effective field goal, 52nd, 2-point percent, 108 from three. Bennett Sturts basically controls the entire offense. He's top 35 in assist rate, shoots 39% from three. Mascari, 3-point sniper, 41% from three. Texas Tech is 30th in total defense, 69th inside, 62nd on the perimeter, so well-balanced team. I think the best defense that Drake has faced all season long, so we'll see how this goes. Texas Tech is 31st in effective field goal, 63rd in 2-point percent, 17th from three. Toppin is so good inside, but a chance McMillan matters. He's the best shooter on this team, 43% from beyond the arc. Christian Anderson's 39%, so you're not sacrificing that much. And then you bring in Walton off the bench. He's a 41% shooter. Drake's biggest weakness is inside. They're 303rd in interior defense. They do defend the three well, 65th. And they're well schemed. So, I mean, they'll have a plan for JT Toppin, but I'm just looking at this. Like, how does JT Toppin not put up like 20 and 10 in this game? I don't have the answer. Drake's really going to have to come in with a plan for him. Turnover margin, foul margin don't project to be a major factor in this game. Tech doesn't commit, or this is a funny stat to look at, actually. I'm going to pull this up so I can be specific. Tech, 152nd in turnovers forced. Drake is 276 in turnovers committed. So, yeah, Drake turns it over a lot, but Tech doesn't force any. Drake is 10th in turnovers forced. Tech is only 30th in turnovers committed. Tech forces a ton. Drake forces a ton. Tech never turns it over. It's the same exact thing in foul margin. Drake generates a lot of fouls. Tech doesn't foul. Drake fouls a ton. Tech doesn't generate any fouls. So nothing really on the periphery stands out for me here. We make this very close to the projected spread. Actually, exactly right on it. Not a game I'm taking right now. Drake is the slowest team in the country, so the value of the point is important. But if you force me to, I would be on Tech minus the 8. That'll do it for us today. Thank you for watching. We'll be back sometime this weekend. Hopefully not after too many beers to discuss Sunday. But until then, good luck. We'll see you later.